ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः। ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So welcome all of you for our study of Bhagavad Gita, and we will continue studying from chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 21. We discussed till verse number 20 last time, and this chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita is entitled Karma Yoga. It's called Karma Yoga. So we'll get started. Let me share my screen. So last time we discussed in the last verse how Lord Krishna gives the example of King Janak, that just by performing his duties as a king, he attained perfection. And therefore, Krishna tells Arjun that just like King Janak, you should also perform your duty as a Kshatriya. Your duty is to fight. So please perform your duty. That takes us to verse number 21. Now, this verse number 21 is very important, my dear friends, and Srila Prabhupada would often quote this verse. Very, very important verse. Verse number 21. So let me show the verse here. Yad yadacharati shrestha tatta deve taro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Let's chant it together once. Yad yad acharati shreshthas tattad eve taro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. What does it mean? Yad yad means whatever. Acharati means acharan. Whatever a person does. Shrestha. Shrestha means a very respectable leader. Whatever actions a respectable leader performs, tattad, that and that alone. Eva means certainly. Itaraha. Itaraha means other people. What do they do? Either itara jana, other people. Saha, he, yat, whichever. Pramanam, example. Kurute, he does perform. Lokaha, all the world. Tad, that. Anuvartate, follows in the footsteps. Anuvartate means to follow behind in footsteps. So what is the meaning? whatever action a great man performs, a great person performs, the common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues that, all the world follows that. So this is the verse. So Krishna is essentially saying that whatever action a great person performs, the common public will follow that example. And whatever standards he sets, the whole world will consider that to be the standard practice, and they will follow. So this is very important. Krishna is saying that whatever a leader does, people have a tendency to follow. So it is a tendency that people idolize a leader, whether that leader is the richest man in the world, like Elon Musk. Everyone is talking about him. And rightly so, because he is very successful in what he does. So people follow his example. The way he thinks, the way he's ambitious, the way he plans. So people also try to follow because he's a leader. Similarly, a politician, a very great politician, or a very great sports star, basketball player or football player or cricket player. Whatever they say, they do, they speak, people try to imitate. I remember when I was doing my surgical residency in Wardha, it was a small village. And I don't know how many of you, those of you who are from India will probably know, there was a movie called Khalnayak that came. And one of the actors in that movie was Sanjay Dutt. And there was a song in that movie where he wears a black and white jacket and a black and white hat, and he sings the song, Nayak nahi Khalnayak hu main. And I saw this fellow, I saw this patient, he walked into the OPD in the clinic, and he was dressed exactly like Sanjay Dutt. His hair was like Sanjay Dutt. His dress was like that song of Sanjay Dutt. And I was shocked. I said, oh, Mr. Khalnayak. He said, yes, I like Sanjay Dutt so much that every day I dress like that only. Oh. I dress like this because this is it. This is the best. Sanjay is the best. So this is an extreme example, but even in less extreme conditions, to less extreme degrees, people knowingly or unknowingly think like and follow the leaders of society, whether they be politicians or sports stars or business. That movie came, Guru, in Bollywood, I remember, about the life of Dhirubhai Ambani. How Dhirubhai Ambani was so successful. Whatever he touched, he transformed it into gold. Whatever market he would enter, he would be successful. So people, they would say, I want to become like Dhirubhai Ambani. I want to become very rich and famous. So like that. I have seen people, they used to smoke like Balasaheb Thackeray. When I was in Bombay, some people would smoke like Balasaheb Thackeray and they would talk. Hey, if you do something, I'll finish you. Like they would speak like this. They would, because in their mind, they are idolizing Balasaheb Thackeray so much that they want to become like him. They want to talk like him. So that is a tendency. People will hold the bat like Sachin Tendulkar. Or they will take their stance when they bat like Sachin Tendulkar. Not that by standing like that or holding an MRF bat, you start batting like Sachin Tendulkar, but they idolize, they imitate. In Bombay, one of the most popular restaurants when I was in Bombay was Tendulkar's. I have to confess, I also went there to eat because they serve the cuisine that is favorite of Sachin Tendulkar. Whatever food he likes, that is what is sold. The restaurant is not owned by Tendulkar, but the restaurant has a cricket bat that is signed by Tendulkar or probably used by Tendulkar. And whatever he likes, that is on the menu. Tendulkar loves this, Tendulkar loves that. So people there is a waiting list to go in that restaurant, at least in those days, in the 1990s, late 1990s. So like that, because people like to follow the leaders. So now the question is, it's okay, this applies only to the leaders, but I can do whatever I want. I'm not a leader. But Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that all of us are leaders. If we are father or mother or brother or sister or any person in the world, there is somebody who looks up to you. Like for example, I may be nobody, I may be very insignificant, but my son Gopal, he may be looking up to me that I want to be like my father. So I'm not even realizing it, but there is somebody who is watching my actions, how I live, what I do, how I speak, how I handle myself. and he's knowingly or unknowingly going to copy. At least when they're young, they know, I want to be like Papa, I want to be like Mama, So all of us have a responsibility. Just by being part of the society, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, we are all leaders. Some are big leaders, some are small leaders. Like Donald Trump, he may be, or who the president is now, Joe Biden. They may be big leaders, or somebody may be small leaders. We may be small leaders. We may not be as influential as Joe Biden or the president of the United States, but to some degree we are influential. So therefore, we all have a responsibility to be exemplary in our life. There is no excuse. All of us have to be exemplary in our life because there's someone who is watching us, someone who is looking up to us. It may be at workplace, it may be at home, it may be in the neighborhood. And so we have to all try to be exemplary, Krishna is saying. Verse number 22. O son of Pritha, Pritha is the name of Kunti Devi, so Arjun's mother. So Pritha means, son of Pritha means Arjun. So, O Arjun, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Three planetary systems means planets that are above the Earth, Earth planet, and planets that are below Earth. So it includes it. All three planetary systems means all the planets that exist above, same level, and lower. So within the three planetary systems, means all over the universe, there is no work that is prescribed for me, which means a prescription is given to somebody who needs to do something. A doctor will give a prescription. You need to take this medicine. Prescription. Take. So prescription means something that is given to us so that we do it. Krishna says there is no work prescribed for me, which means I am under nobody. Nobody can tell me what to do or that I have to do this. Nor am I in want of anything. Nor do I need anything from anyone. Nor have I a need to obtain anything because Krishna is self-sufficient. So he doesn't need to obtain anything from anyone. But yet, I am engaged in the prescribed duties. So Krishna is saying, even though there is nothing I need to do, nothing that is required of me, I don't need anything from anyone, but still to set an example, I am performing the prescribed duties. Example, Krishna's parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, they were imprisoned by King Kansa in Mathura. What did Krishna do? As soon as he was 11 years old, he went from Vrindavan to Mathura, fought with Kansa, killed Kansa, and released his parents from the jail. Now, actually, Krishna is not required to do anything. Krishna can just think in his mind that let Kansa die, and Kansa will die. Because everybody is sustained by Krishna. But no, to set an example like a proper son, he goes there, he challenges, he fights, he shows anger that you have imprisoned my parents, I will free them. And he frees his parents. And then he makes his grandfather the king, King Ugrasen, again the king of Mathura. So Krishna is saying, even though I am God and I am not required to do anything, I am above all this, but still I am engaging in all the duties that should be done. For example, we may set a screen time limit for the kids that Gopal, Maithili, no watching TV after 9 o'clock. No watching your iPhone, no watching TV after 9 o'clock. No watching. Screen time is closed because you have to sleep. If you watch the screen, then you will not get proper sleep. So we may set a standard. Now, does that apply to me? No. It's just a rule that I'm making for the kids. I don't need to follow. I can get up at midnight and watch a movie if I want. Nobody's going to question me in this house. But I will not do that, to set an example. Because then what will happen? Gopal and Maithili will say, but dad, you just started watching a movie. It's 9 o'clock. Why are you restricting us? Why can't we do it? So to set an example, I will also shut my phone and I will climb into bed and I will say good night. It is bedtime for all of us. Then they will say, okay, come on, let's sleep. You see? So Krishna is saying to set an example, although I'm not required to follow all this, but I'm following the rules of human society. I'm performing my duties. Then verse number 23, Krishna says, again, same thing. Because if I ever fail to engage carefully in performing my prescribed duties, O Arjun, certainly all men would follow my path. They will say, oh, Krishna did that, we will also do it. Oh, this leader is doing that, we will also do it. And that is actually happening in society. Once, actually I was part of this. We all know that a president of a very powerful country was once caught in a scandal while he was in office. And so at that time, there was one couple that I knew, and the wife had filed for divorce. because the husband had made the same mistake. And this, I was part of the discussions, and the husband ultimately said that, I mean, why are you taking it so seriously? I'm providing for you. I'm giving you a house, roti, kapda, makan, food, shelter, clothing. And I mean, even look at that president of that country. He also did that. And his wife didn't divorce. They're still married. So why are you making such a big deal out of it? So he's giving that example of a leader, the president of a country. And then, so, and he's saying that, so what, I mean, I did that, but it's a mistake that happened, but I'm doing my duty as a husband properly. I'm providing for you and everything. But to remain chaste to one's wife is also the duty, one of the duties. So he's overlooking that. Why? Because a leader is not doing that. Similarly, I have heard this so many times when there are elections. There are two candidates and there are competitors in election, and people are discussing, who should we vote? Should we vote for this fellow? Should we vote for that fellow? And people will say, no, vote for this. Oh no, but in his personal life, he has done that. He has evaded taxes for years, and in his personal life, he has got such views about this community. He has spoken such bad things about this particular community. We should not vote for him. He gives hate speeches, this and that. People say, but all that is his personal view. That doesn't matter. But wo kaam karta hai. He does the work. He gets the job done. So vote for him. See, people say that a politician may have been accused of murder or have been accused of something very bad, but he does work, man. He gets things done. So vote for this politician. That is what people say. And people get voted because they do the work, regardless of their private life. Then private life, they may have had extramarital affairs or whatever. But that's his personal life. But in office, he's good. He gets the job done, vote for him. That's what people say. But this is wrong. Why did Lord Ramachandra send Mother Sita to the ashram of Valmiki Muni? Because people are pointing fingers at his personal life. And Lord Ramachandra said that, no, as a king, if I'm enjoying the position of a king, with that power comes responsibility. Responsibility to be ideal, to be Maryada Purushottam. That if this is what the society is thinking, then all right, I will stay separately from my wife. And he arranged nicely that Sita Devi will be taken care of at Valmiki Muni's ashram. And he said, I will stay separately. She will not be the queen. Because people are pointing. Because what happened was, some ladies were staying with another man and they were coming home and the husband said, hey, where are you? Where were you? So what? Sita also stayed for 1 year in the house of someone, in the palace of someone else. And Ram accepted her. So you accept me. Now there is so much difference between that woman and Sita Devi. Sita Devi had passed the Agni Pariksha. That even if for one moment I thought of anyone other than Ram, let the fire burn me. And the fire did not touch Sita Devi. That was the power of her chastity. But people don't know that. They were just using that as an example to do wrong things and fulfill their illicit desires. This is the nature of the world, my dear friends. People will take one small thing and they will blow it out of proportion. But Lord Ram is teaching us that if we want to be a leader in society, we cannot separate our personal life and political life. Our entire character, personal character and character in office, everything has to be exemplary. If that responsibility we are willing to take, then accept the power and prestige of being a leader. So power and prestige of being a leader comes with a price. But what people want in today's society, they want to have the power, the prestige, the respect that comes with position, and they don't want to take the responsibility that comes along with it. They want power without responsibility. So now we go to verse number 24. If I did not perform prescribed duties, Krishna is saying, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Means Krishna is saying, if I do whatever I want, if I do something wrong, then the whole world will follow me and the whole world will be ruined. Everything will be spoiled. The whole population will be spoiled. And without good population, there is no chance of peace. Why we don't have peace in today's society? Because people don't follow the ethics and morals. Imagine if everybody was like Mahatma Gandhi or Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa. We will not need to have ADT security in our house. We'll not have to keep guns in the house, But because people are not like that, we have all these problems in society because people are not pure. Verse number 25. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So Krishna is saying, why should we work? We should work to set a right example. We should do things to set a right example. Like there are some very good things in leaders. For example, if we see Bill Gates, he made a lot of money, but he's using a lot of that wealth to fight problems like malaria, shortage of vaccines, and so many other good causes, giving medicines to the African countries to buy antiretroviral drugs, medicines to treat HIV infection, because HIV infection was so widespread in the 1990s and in the 2000s. So he spent a lot of his wealth in producing affordable medicines to treat HIV and malaria medicine in the African countries. So one should work to set an example. Now, if a leader like Bill Gates sets this example, then it is likely that some other industrialists, other rich people, other millionaires, billionaires will also follow suit. They will follow the example and do something similar. So Krishna is saying that please perform your duties for the sake of leading people on the right path. And Krishna is saying, do this without attachment. I'll give an example. Once in a temple, a person, he gifted a wall clock. How we have a wall clock there? He gifted a wall clock. People go to temple and they like it and they want to contribute, they want to do something. So he gifted a wall. This is a true story. He gifted a wall clock, just a wall clock. He gifted, and immediately the brahmachari, he went and he put the clock on the wall, on the one wall of the temple hall, because they didn't have a clock. He wanted to do some seva, some service. So he said, I'll donate a nice big wall clock where anywhere in the big temple hall, people can see the time. So he bought a wall clock, gifted it, and one of the ashram residents, a brahmachari, he went and put that clock on the wall. And this man was feeling very happy. And he was telling everybody, that clock I donated. And even there, people write on that clock, from best compliment from such and such person. On the clock it is written. So then he comes back after 1 year to the temple. Well, he is not a regular devotee. He came next Janmashtami or something. He came and so the clock was not there, because the temple had been repainted or something had happened, and somehow the clock was not there on that wall. So he had brought people with him and he said, I gifted a clock. Where is that clock? He called one of the brahmachari. Hey, I donated a clock last year, big, nice clock. Where is that clock? It was supposed to be there. So brahmachari said, I think we shifted it inside in the ashram so that the brahmacharis can see the time. He started chastising. He said, hey, who told you? I gifted the clock. It has my name on it. It should be there in the main temple hall. I bought it for the main temple hall, not for your brahmachari ashram. Bring it and keep it there on the wall. So the brahmachari said, okay. Brahmachari went and got. And then the guru heard this, who managed the temple. And he called this donor. He said, you gave that clock, right? Yes, I gave it as a clock. He said, you gave it to me? So yes, yes, Maharaj, I gave it to you. He said, I will do whatever I want with that clock. And he told the brahmachari, throw that clock in the dustbin. That clock that has his name, throw it in the dustbin. We don't need a clock. We have Krishna. Krishna is time. Krishna says, time I am. Kalosmi. Kal I am. Krishna is, we have Krishna. We don't need that clock. He said, because that clock is infected with this man's false prestige and false pride. He's so proud of it. So we don't want it. We can do anything we want. You gave it to the temple, you should forget all connection with that. But you want to show everybody that you gave it. There it is. There I gave that donation. He said, you are simply increasing your pride. And the purpose of coming to temple is to become humble. And during the whole lecture, in front of everyone, Maharaj chastised him. Said, you have given that clock. Take that clock and throw it in the dustbin right now. He told the brahmachari. Throw it in the dustbin. And the brahmachari went and threw it in the dustbin. Said, that's where your clock. Now ask me, where is the clock? No, ask me, where is the clock? So he says, Maharaj, where is the clock? It's in the dustbin. Understand? Your clock is in the dustbin. Krishna does not need your clock. This temple does not need your clock. Understand? If you want to donate anything, give it and forget about it. Don't claim any respect or prestige from it. So therefore, Krishna is saying that how ignorant persons, see the 25th verse, as ignorant persons perform their duties with attachment to results. They are attached. I gave donation. I should have recognition, prestige for this. But how a learned person acts? A learned person acts similarly. He will also give a donation of a clock, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people in the right direction. Therefore, we have people who are anonymous donors. That is ideal. You do your duty of donating, but don't want any prestige, false prestige. So just like a common person does something with attachment, a devotee does that same thing, but without attachment to the results, selflessly. That is a difference. Activity is same, giving the same donation. One is for prestige and one is for service. Hare Krishna. Verse number 26. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Now, this is a very important principle. Please pay attention. Verse 26. What Krishna is saying is, let's say someone is doing something wrong. Instead of telling that person that this is wrong, don't do it, you show them how to do it in a right way. For example, like this person, he gave the clock, but for prestige. So what did the leader of that ashram, that temple do? He taught him, chastised him, rightly so, and taught him how to do it properly. He said, give a clock, but don't write your name on that clock, and don't expect any respect and prestige and recognition for that act of donation. It is an act of charity. So instead of telling them, just go away, don't show me your face again, you teach them how to do the thing in a right way. If they are doing something wrong, teach them how to do in a right way. Like, for example, when Prabhupada came to America, there was a movement among the youth called the hippie movement. We all know the hippies. They used to love to create music. So they would be sitting with a guitar on the side of the street, and they would be, this music talking about so many social issues. They would be singing. And what did Srila Prabhupada do? He came and he simply taught them, you sing, but you sing for Krishna. They were singing, they were writing songs about love and drugs and how you feel expansion of consciousness when you do drugs. Prabhupada said, instead of all that, you chant Hare Krishna, you talk about Krishna. And thus your singing becomes perfect. People make so many, drawings and paintings. Prabhupada taught Yadurani Mataji that you paint for Krishna. And there's a very beautiful calendar there now. Right, Prabhu, do you mind the topmost calendar over there? Yadurani Mataji, she made such beautiful, she was an artist, and Prabhupada taught her how to make paintings. See, she made such a beautiful painting. Her Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada, it's not. Yeah, like that, about Radha and Krishna. So instead of saying, hey, don't do this, don't make paintings that are useless, not connected to Krishna, instead teach them how to paint something in relationship to Krishna. That is what Krishna is saying, teaching here. So don't disrupt them by saying, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong. Instead, teach them how to work in a spirit of devotion and engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. If you're a painter, paint for Krishna. You're a singer, sing for Krishna. You're a doctor, do some charity. Treat people for free, serve them. So like that. If you're a businessman, you have money, you give part of your profits for Krishna, donate it to Krishna, like that. Verse number 27. The spirit soul. So here also again there's a very nice story in this relation, how to engage people in Krishna's service. There was once, this is a true story also, very, very amazing story. This happened in Vrindavan. There was a person, he was a dacoit. And what he used to do is, he used to stay in the village, and when people would go from one village to other, he would attack them and loot them. Whatever possessions they had, he would just, at knife point, he would rob from them. And once he was in the forest, going from one place to another, and deep in the forest in Vrindavan, under a tree, he saw one sadhu doing bhajan. And the sadhu was chanting with such absorption, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. As he was chanting, tears of love were flowing from his eyes. He was experiencing such bliss, and there was a effulgence, like a different effulgence coming from his body. Such peace, such love, such tranquility. This dacoit had never seen anything like this. He was a meat eater, he was a murderer, he was a robber. He used to do all sinful activities. Never once went to a sadhu, never went to any temple, never attended any satsang, never did any kirtan in his life. And he saw sadhu sitting there under a tree. He was very impressed and he was just standing and watching. This fellow is just chanting a mantra and he's feeling so much bliss. To feel happiness, I have to do so many things. I have to rob money, I have to buy things and then become happy. This fellow has nothing. He has nothing. He only wearing one loin cloth and is sitting and chanting and he's feeling so much bliss. So he went in front of him and he folded his hands and bowed down. The sadhu opened his eyes. He said, "Who are you?" He said, "I am a dacoit. I'm a very sinful person. I'm a dacoit." So this sadhu told him, "You should not waste your life. You have got a human life. The difference between an animal and a human being is a human being can inquire about God and try to understand God. An animal cannot. As far as eating, sleeping, mating, defending is concerned, that even animals do. They also eat and they also sleep. They also have their families. They defend themselves. So all these things even human beings can, even animals can do. That is not what human life is meant for. Human life is meant to understand God. You can understand God. So stop all these activities." So he said, and when a sadhu speaks, it has a very deep effect on a person. So immediately this dacoit was shaken. He said, "I accept you as my guru. Please give me diksha. Please give me initiation. Give me diksha and I want to follow whatever you say throughout my life." This sadhu says, "I will give you diksha. But before that, you have to purify yourself. Just now you have probably looted somebody, eaten meat. So, diksha is not so cheap. I will give you diksha, but first you have to purify yourself." He says, "How can I purify myself?" Sadhu said, "You have to go to all the holy places and you have to bathe in all the heavy holy rivers like Ganga, Jamuna, Godavari, Kaveri. You have to visit all the holy temples. Go to Shri Guruvayur, go to Ranganath temple, go to Tirupati, go all the holy places in India. Go to Badrinath, go to Dwarka, bathe in the holy oceans, holy rivers, holy lakes, purify yourself. And then when you are purified by taking darshan of the Lord, going to holy places, hearing from the sadhus who live there, when you're completely purified, then you come to me and I will give you diksha." So sadhu said, "But how will I come to know that I have become purified? How will I come to know that I have become purified?" Sadhu says, he picks up a stick from the ground, a dry stick that had fallen from the tree. Dry stick. He says, "Hold the stick, keep it in your hand. And as you go to holy places, you take dips in the holy rivers and everything. One day, this dry stick will become green and green, fresh leaves will sprout from this tree, from this branch. And then you will know that you have become purified. When this branch becomes filled with green leaves, the stick gets covered with green leaves, you come to me. Then you are purified and then I will give you diksha." This dacoit has full faith in his guru. He says, yes. He takes that dry stick from the guru and he says, "Okay, I'm going on pilgrimage." So he starts going on pilgrimage, full faith in his guru that this stick will become green, filled with green leaves one day when I become purified. And he's going, and suddenly remembers that I still have my knife with me. He says, "No, I don't need a knife now. Now I have become sadhu." So he goes back to the sadhu, his guru, and gives the knife to him. Said, "I don't need the knife. I only need the stick now." So sadhu, okay, keep the knife down, go. Just take this stick, go all the holy places and take bath in all the holy rivers. So yes, Guru Maharaj, yes, I'm going. Only taking that stick, full faith, he goes. And he has only gone some distance. And he's going through the forest and he hears somebody talking. So now he's a very expert fellow. He's a dacoit, always he has hidden and guerrilla warfare and all those things. He's fully expert. So he hides behind a tree and tries to listen. So in the tree right in front of him, on the tree, there are 4 people sitting and they're talking. And what are they saying? They are saying there is this village in Vrindavan. This village in Vrindavan. And there are many pilgrims who have come there because it is the holy month of Kartik. And these pilgrims, those days, there were no credit cards. People would carry cash. People would carry money, gold coins with them for spending when they were traveling. So there are many people and they have money with them. And they are all living in this village. So what we will do, we are 4 of us. We are expert dacoits. We will, at night, put fire all around the village. will set fire to the village all around it from all directions. And when the people start getting engulfed with fire, they will panic and they will leave the village and they will run here and there. And in 4 directions, we will be standing, 4 of us. And as they come at knife point, we will loot them. We'll loot them, whatever jewelry they are wearing, whatever, they'll pick up their valuables and run, right? To save their life. So we'll take all the valuables from them and we'll loot the whole village in one sweep. And then 4 of us, we will distribute our loot and we will be happy. They were discussing this plan. And this dacoit is listening to this. And he's saying, my guru said that this Vrindavan is a very holy place. It is filled with devotees. And these 4 dacoits are planning to loot an entire village in the holy place of Vrindavan. I must stop this. So holding that stick in his hand, this dacoit goes under the tree and he says, hey, listen, as far as this dacoitry is concerned, I am your guru. I've been doing this all my life. So I'm telling you, this is not good. I have realized it today. Today only I realized that this is not good. This is not the right path. So you should give up your plan to loot this village. So they say, Acha, you are going to teach us that we should give up this plan. And you have heard our plan also. So now you cannot live. Now we'll kill you. So these 4 people, they jump down with their knives. But this dacoit is so powerful. He's really their guru when it comes to this. He has done it all his life. He fights with them barehanded. They have all 4 of them are armed with knives and he's alone with no weapon. But he was so powerful. He fought with them. He grabbed their knife from them and he killed all 4 of them. Within minutes, all 4 of them were dead. He fought so expertly, just killed them. And then he thought, what did I do? Just now my guru told me you should stop murders, you should stop eating meat, you should stop killing people, you should stop robbing, and you should be a sadhu. And just few minutes after receiving this instruction from my guru, I have killed 4 people. What a sinful person I am. But anyway, whatever happened, happened. Now I will not do this again. Let me continue my pilgrimage. He picks up his stick and sees that the stick has become green and all leaves have come on it. He says, oh, my pilgrimage is over. I did not even have to leave Vrindavan. My pilgrimage is over. So he goes back to his guru very happy. He says, Guru Maharaj, look, the stick has become green. So the guru says, Acha, which holy places did you go to? He said, I didn't even go. I just started my pilgrimage. And in fact, I promised you I will not kill anybody. But I have to tell you, in the last few hours, I have already murdered 4 people. But the stick has become green. See, all the green leaves have come. So I came back to you for Diksha. Now please give me Diksha. The guru said, yes, I will give you Diksha. You are qualified to get Diksha now. You are pure. Even though you have committed murders. Why? Because previously you were committing murders for your own enjoyment, but now you have committed murder to save devotees. You have committed murders to serve people, to save the devotees. And therefore, that murder is not murder, that murder is seva. And therefore, you have become purified now by serving Krishna in this way. You saved a whole village of devotees from these dacoits. So now you are ready for initiation. So here, that same thing Krishna is saying, that we should rather, by verse number 26, working in a spirit of devotion, we should engage them in all sorts of activities for the development of Krishna consciousness. So what is most important is why we are doing something. For example, in 2008, there was a terrorist attack, remember, in Bombay, Hotel Taj Mahal, Hotel Oberoi, CST railway station. Those terrorists came, and what did they do with machine guns? They killed. And what did the NSG, National Service Guard, they do? They also do machine gun, they also killed. But these terrorists were killing innocent people. Kasab was killing innocent people. So he was hung to death. He was given a death penalty. And the NSG or the other Mumbai police officers who were fighting this terrorists, they were also killing, they were also shooting bullets. But they got award. They got recognized, they got award, they got a medal. Activity is same. Activity is murder, activity is killing, it is shooting with guns. Both are doing the same thing. But one is given a death punishment and one is given an award. And he's glorified and recognized, and their children are given scholarship and free education. Yeah, these police officers who lost their lives, their children were given free education, sponsored by so many kind-hearted people because their father was so great person, such a great person. So why this difference? Because one person is doing an act of terrorism, another person is doing act of patriotism. The act is same, to take a gun and shoot. But the question is, under whose authority are you doing it? Are you doing under the authority of some terrorist sitting in Pakistan, or are you doing it under the authority of the government of India? This is an example. So activity is same, but the consciousness, why we are doing it, for whom we are doing it, that is the main question. That is what determines whether our action is correct or it is wrong. Verse number 26. 27. Now, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So now here a very important point is being made. Krishna says that this body that we have, all actions that we perform with this body, correct? But this body we have not created. Krishna has created. So whatever activity we do, the credit goes to Krishna. The credit goes to so many people. For example, now let's take the example of Nishaji. So now you are educated, you have a degree, you have a job, you are working, you are earning money, you have come to Canada and America from India. So now you are grateful to so many people. You are grateful to your parents, you are grateful to your family members who have helped you in times of need, you are grateful to your friends, you are grateful to your teachers who taught you, isn't it? You are grateful to your mentors who have guided you in your career. You are grateful to so many people in your life. So if we say that you are a successful lady, well, you will say, no, but the credit goes to so many people who have played a role in my success. So Krishna is saying that a person who is very egoistic thinks that he's the doer. I am a self-made man, people say. I am a self-made man. My rags to riches story. They become very proud. But Krishna is actually, they are very wrong. They are being very egoistic. Why? Because these actions are carried out by so many people who have contributed to it. First of all these things that you have done through your body. Who gave you your body? That is the first question. So how can you forget the contribution of so many people in your life? Like there is very something that I have experienced firsthand. It was Janmashtami in India. Janmashtami is a very big festival. It is the appearance day of Lord Krishna, and in the temple many people come. So one businessman came, and you know how Janmashtami, there's a big line. So you cannot just park in front of the temple. There is special parking arrangement. Our Jayakumar Prabhu, he used to manage the parking for Janmashtami in our temple. So it takes a lot of management. We are literally hundreds of cars that are coming. So this man, he came in a nice chauffeur-driven Skoda. In India, it's a nice luxury car, European car. So he came in a nice chauffeur-driven Skoda. I still remember. But his driver had to park it somewhere far away because there was such a big line. And he comes, and my service was to welcome the important guests who had contributed, the big donors and everything. So this fellow also was one of the big people who had come that day. And my service was to receive the guests who had given a special invitation, to receive them and take them, show them the temple, show them darshan, and give them Bhagavad Gita like that. So along with Bhagavad Gita, we were also giving a box of prasad on Janmashtami to the guests. Everyone gets prasad on Janmashtami. So he was given a box of prasad, Mahaprasad. It had laddu, sandesh, barfi, gulab jam, and so many nice things. So he was given that Mahaprasad plate. He had come, dressed up like a big Seth. He comes and he's given that prasad. And he puts his hand in the pant, trouser, wallet. Oh, I forgot my wallet in the car. He said, no, we are not asking you for money. This is free prasad. Please take. So he looked at me and said, no, I never take anything for free. You give me that prasad, I will give you money. I don't take anything for free. So at that time, my Guru Maharaj was there. And he said, when you were born, this oxygen that you are breathing every moment, did you bring it with you? When you were born with oxygen cylinder, you brought the air for yourself. He said, you are taking it for free from Krishna since you were born. And you're standing in Krishna's temple and you have the audacity to say, I don't take anything for free. So rascal, water you have been drinking, air you have been breathing, all Krishna is supplying. In Gita, Krishna says, Bhumi rapor nalo vayur kham mano buddhi revacha ahankar ityam me bhinna prakriti ashtada. This earth, water, fire, air, they are my bhinna prakriti ashtada. They are my energies. So you are drinking Krishna's water, you are breathing Krishna's air, and you are saying, I don't take anything for free. Yeah, take this. You have been taking everything free. Quietly take and eat that prasad and feel grateful. So like that. So people think that they are the doers of everything. Self-made man. That is all nonsense. Verse number 28. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Work for fruitive results means what? I will do something and I want something in return for that. But work in devotion means, Krishna, I'm doing it because I love you. I don't want anything in return. So that is the difference. So Krishna is saying that one who is in knowledge, one who is a devotee, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification. Sense gratification means enjoying with our senses personally. But devotion means to work in devotion for Krishna without expecting anything in return. That is real devotion. Verse number 29. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities. So people who are bewildered, people who don't know what is right, they get completely busy, completely occupied in materialistic activities, and they become very attached. This is anybody, you take any example in this world. Most people are like that. They may be, IT walas, or they may be doctors, right here in Atlanta. But you analyze their life, you meet them on a Saturday or Sunday, everything is how to be successful materially, where you can get the best house, where you can get cryptocurrency, or all this will be the discussion. There will be no talks of Krishna, how the real estate is doing, how to get the best deal on a Tesla. All these things will be discussed. Everything is material activities and complete attachment. Why? Because they are bewildered, they are ignorant. The purpose of life is not all this. The purpose of life, human life, is to become mad in love with God. That is what we are meant for. Now, verse number 29, Krishna continues, but the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So what does that mean? As devotees, we should not unsettle them. We should not just go and criticize them. Hey, you fool, you're talking about all these materialistic things, you're a fool. No, not like that. That is not how. See, they are like that. Why? Because of the lack of knowledge. Krishna is saying, look at the 29th verse end. It is due to lack of knowledge. So all we have to do is not criticize them, but just share knowledge with them. Discuss Bhagavad Gita with them. Discuss Bhagavatam with them. Invite them in the Kirtan. That's all we have to do. Verse number 30. Therefore, O Arjun, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So Krishna is saying, therefore, Arjun, surrender to me. Just surrender your work to me. Listen to what I'm saying with full knowledge of me, without any desire for personal profit. Because everything we do in this material world, what is in it for me? Always you're thinking, what is the profit for me? So he's saying, give up all desire for personal profit. Don't have any claims to proprietorship. I am this belongs to me, that belongs to me. And also free from lethargy. Because it is very important. Look at this verse number 30. Krishna is so amazing. So Krishna is saying how we should work, Arjun, without desires for profit. Okay. So work without any desire for profit. And with no claim to proprietorship. Don't claim proprietorship, ownership over anything. That this belongs to me, that belongs to me. So one may think, what? Don't work for profit. Don't have any claim of proprietorship over anything. Then why should I work? Forget it. I will not work only then. So it says, free from lethargy. Don't be lethargic. Don't be lazy. Don't say I will not work. Because the moment the fruit is taken away from us, you work but without any personal selfish interest. Then why should I work? Why does it not work only then? Because no. Free from lethargy, you get up and you fight. Fight because I am telling you to fight. Fight because you are fighting against adharma. Duryodhana is a wicked fellow and we have to remove him from power. That's why you fight, because I am telling you. Without any personal desire for profit. Verse number 31. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive activities, fruitive actions. So we are all bound in this world, my dear friends. This world is like a jail. We are all bound in this jail. And how do we become free from this jail? What is the formula for becoming free from this jail? We have to execute our duties according to Krishna's injunction and follow his teachings faithfully. Therefore, every day we should read Bhagavad Gita. It tells us what we should do, what we should not do. And just by working the way Krishna wants us to work, we will become free from the bondage of this world. So simple. Verse number 32. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow these teachings regularly are to be considered without any knowledge, bereft of all knowledge. They are considered to be fooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So someone may be very successful in life, but if they are not following these teachings of God, who is the creator of everything, who is the source of everything, then all their efforts are ruined. For example, a child may be very successful because the parents have invested so much in their education, put them in the best school, brought them to the best tutors, given them study room, given them high-speed internet, the best computer so they can work and study, and all facilities, nice food, nice clothes, nice room to take a rest. All the facilities have been given. But if this child thinks that I am self-made, I have done this on my own merit, and disregards the parents, then is that child successful really? No, he's completely a big failure. So everything is ruined if we are like that. So therefore, we should never disregard Krishna's teachings. Verse number 33. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes of material nature. What can repression accomplish? So Krishna is saying that we all have something called as swabhava. All of us have swabhava, nature. Like Rajesh Prabhu's nature is in a particular way. Then Nisha Mataji's nature is in a particular way. Mallika's nature is a particular way. Jaikumar Prabhu's nature is a particular way. My nature is there. So we all have our swabhava. Swa means it's our personal nature, isn't it? Everybody agrees? Not everybody is equal. Why we make friendship with somebody? Because we get along. Because that nature is compatible. So everybody has a nature. So Krishna is saying how we have got that nature. We have acquired that nature from the three modes of material nature. There are three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Three qualities are there in this world. Goodness means to be very truthful, very peaceful, very kind. That is the nature of goodness. Nature of passion. Passion means we want to do something and achieve something. Work and do something. That is passion. And ignorance means to be lazy, to hurt others, to be insensitive. That is called ignorance. So there are these three modes. And all of us, our nature is a permutation combination of different degrees of these three natures: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva gun, rajogun, and tamagun. And that's what we are made up of. So based on that, what we like, what we dislike, we have a compatible nature. And people make friendship, they come together on common grounds. So Krishna is saying that everyone has nature, and according to their nature, their swabhava, they act in this world. And this nature is created by the three modes of material nature. And therefore, everyone is helplessly going to act according to their swabhava, their nature. What can repression accomplish? Krishna is saying, verse number 33. What can repression accomplish? For example, why Krishna is saying this? Arjun is saying, I will not fight. What Krishna is saying, oh Arjun, by your swabhava, by your nature, you are a fighter. You are a Kshatriya, you are a warrior. So don't artificially say, I will put my bow down, I will not fight. You will have to fight, Baba. It is your nature to fight. If you don't fight this war, you will go and fight somewhere else. But it is your nature to fight. So similarly, we all have our natures. And we have a certain tendency, certain things, certain attributes. We have to analyze our own nature and see what we are good at, what comes to us naturally. And we should develop ourselves in that, all of us. All of us have talents. All of us have natures and talents and abilities. We have our forte, we have our strong points, we have our weaknesses. So we have to see what we are good at, and we have to mold our life accordingly and do something, because all of us have the ability to contribute something very meaningfully. And Krishna is identifying the potential in Arjun. This Arjun can be a very good fighter. He is a very good fighter. So he should fight for the dharma, for the right cause. That's what Krishna's point is. What can repression accomplish? Don't artificially repress and suppress your swabhava. For example, if someone is a born leader, he's very charismatic, he can give very nice speeches, he can involve people, and get things done. If you tell that person, no, you just stay at home and you just don't give any public lectures, don't lead people, just be humble, just stay in a corner, just mind your own business. That is such a disservice to that person's talent, isn't it? So everybody has a nature. Like if tell Tendulkar that you become a doctor, his wife is a doctor, so you should also be a doctor. No, that is not. Or you tell his wife you become a cricket player. It won't work. Everybody has a certain talent, certain ability, certain nature that we have acquired from our previous karma. So many lifetimes of work, we have acquired a certain nature. Now that nature has to be used in the service of Krishna. If someone is a good cook, you cook for Krishna. Someone is a warrior like Arjun, you fight. Draupadi used to cook for Krishna when Krishna would visit them. So much love. And Arjun was fighting for Krishna. Both are perfect, but they are following their own nature, their own swabhav. That's what Krishna is saying. Don't repress and suppress your swabhav, your own nature. Act according to the nature that you have naturally acquired. Verse number 34. And how to use our nature in Krishna's service? For that we need a guru. You see, Arjun on his own wanted to give up fighting and just retire. But his guru is Krishna. And Krishna is saying, no, Arjun, this is not time for retirement. You have to fight for me. You can contribute so much. Therefore, we need a guru who can tell us what to do in life. 34. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So we have attachment to some things and we don't like certain things. We detest certain things, all of us. So one should not come under the control of this attachment and aversion. To give an example, I knew one person, he had this attitude that only someone who is born in India, someone who has Indian blood can become a guru. If someone is a Firangi, someone is born with a white skin, Western world, that person can never teach Vedas. That person can never teach Bhagavad Gita to us, in Indians, Hindus. You are teaching us. You are born in that Western country, you cannot become a guru. He had this notion. He still has that notion, unfortunately. Whereas he cannot accept that somebody who is born in America or in the Western world can become a guru. You have to be born in India only, he says. So such attachment and aversion is a stumbling block. So our attachments and aversions, there are principles to regulate, Krishna is saying, verse 34. These principles are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. That Chaturvarna Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasham. That how are men to be categorized? Not by birth, which country they are born. No, not like that. Krishna says, Chaturvarna Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasham. Vibhagasham is Vibhajan, to divide. How are people divided or categorized? Based on Guna and Karma. Their personal qualities and their activities. If someone's quality is very saintly and someone's activity is saintly, who is that person? Saint. If someone is born in India, but the activities are not saintly, and his qualities are not saintly, then how can you consider him a guru or a saintly person just because he's born in the family of gurus? No. So it is according to guna karma, your qualities, guna, your characteristics, and karma, your actions, your activities. Actions speak louder than words. So all that has to be understood from Shastra. Therefore, Krishna says there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion. 35. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Very, very important. Now, for example, when there was terrorist attack in Mumbai, the National Service Guard, NSG, were called. Now, just before entering Hotel Taj Mahal, where there are dangerous terrorists holed up, if the NSG fighter says, you know what, I like that temple there, Radha Gopinath Mandir. Let me go there and become a brahmachari. From today, I will just give up everything and I will just chant there. So is that right? No. Because what is your dharma? As a fighter, you have to go and fight. So Krishna is saying, it is far better to discharge one's own prescribed duty, even though there will be some mistake, even though faultily, than to perform another's duty perfectly. So one may say that, no, I can be a very nice brahmachari. It's okay. I will just teach Bhagavad Gita from today. I don't want to fight. So that is not right, because we have been trained. It is our nature to be a Kshatriya, nature to fight. That's what we should do. And Krishna says that destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty. For to follow another's path is dangerous. Now there is an example of this in Mahabharata, the story of Ekalavya. Ekalavya was born in a tribal family, and his nature was to be a Shudra, because he had a Shudra mentality. He needed to be under the guidance and control of somebody. But he was very ambitious, and he wanted to learn Dhanurvidya, the art of fighting, from Dronacharya. And his whole ambition was, I want to become better than Arjun, because he heard that in Dronacharya's school, Arjun is the best pupil, best student, and Dronacharya has declared that Arjun is the best archer in the whole world. So I want to be better than Arjun. Now, he had the talent, but he did not have the character. Now, talent and ability without a good character is very dangerous. If power is given to such a person, that person can become a Hitler. Hitler had power without character. Therefore, millions of innocent people were killed, children, ladies. And he got the best doctors and said, without anesthesia, perform all experimental surgeries on these Jews in the Jewish camp. That's how all the surgical techniques, many of them evolved in Germany. Just use them as experiments, experimental models. Just remove both the kidneys and see what happens. How many hours it takes for a man to die without kidneys. Let's do this experiment on these Jews. Let's starve them and see how many days it takes for a person to die without food. Let's experiment. So he did all those human experiments and killed millions of people because he was a very wicked, cruel, immoral person, Hitler. And there are so many examples like this in the world of cruel rulers. Why? They have power without character. Power with character means Yudhishthira Maharaj, Lord Ram. They are the examples. Shivaji Maharaj. Power with character. There's a story that happened in Kalyan, historical true story. There was a Muslim ruler in Kalyan, and Shivaji Maharaj invaded and defeated that Muslim king. And he had a very beautiful 18-year-old wife, Begum. He had many Begums, many wives. One of them was very young, very beautiful. So when Shivaji Maharaj, who was probably in his 40s, 30s and 40s, he defeated that king. Whatever wealth that king had goes to the invading king who defeated him. So all the money, all the gold, all the wealth that he had, all the forts, all the soldiers, all the swords and army that he has, everything comes to Shivaji Maharaj. So everything is brought and presented to Shivaji Maharaj. That was the tradition of that time. When a king defeats a king, he sits on the throne, and whatever valuable that king had is offered to the new king. So this Begum was brought, Kalyan, near Mumbai. This Begum was brought in front of Shivaji Maharaj and said, from today she is your property. Shivaji Maharaj looked at her lotus feet, looked at her feet and said, hey Mate, oh mother, please forgive my soldiers for speaking like this. And he looked at his soldiers and said, she is like my mother because she's another man's wife. Matravat paradaryeshu. She's another man's wife. She is my mother. Immediately return her to her husband, the Muslim king. The king is defeated. His wealth and everything is mine, but not his wife. Wife is a mother for me. So please immediately return. Why Shivaji Maharaj had that attitude? Because since Shivaji Maharaj was a small child, his mother Jijamata taught him Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Therefore, he was like a Rajarshi, Shivaji Maharaj. He had such high character. Therefore, power has to be coupled with character. Power without character is Hitler. That is very dangerous. Therefore, Krishna is saying that to follow another's path is very dangerous. We have to follow what is our dharma, what is our nature under proper guidance. Now, the theme of Bhagavad Gita changes from verse number 36. Arjuna is going to ask a very important question, and then Krishna will give it the answer. And that's a new theme, and that we will continue next Saturday from verse number 36. We'll continue next Saturday. So we'll stop here. It's 1 hour. If there are any questions or comments, we can take now. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, those of you who want to unmute yourself and you have a question or you want to make a comment, you can unmute yourself. I will stop here. Hare Krishna. Do you all have any questions or comments? No?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Janvat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for very nice class. So many wonderful, relatable examples. Prabhu, I have a question about the last point. Like we should follow, work according to our nature,
Mhm.
and the example of Eklavya. Um, question is that in the Kali Yuga, like the nature, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, that part is like so much of mix in myself, I can say for sure. So then it's very, very difficult, it seems, to work according to my nature, especially the occupational duty. So how do we actually how do we understand what is that actual nature and what occupation should I do? But I mean, it generally feels, for myself, I can say that I don't think my occupation and my nature matches, and it's such a mix of a nature, like so many different like if I analyze and observe myself, I feel like it's so much of a mix.
Yeah. So in case of Ekalavya, he had the nature of a very cruel person, a very competitive, unhealthy competitive person. And he wanted to be the best because he wanted to outdo Arjun and he wanted to become the top archer in the world. Therefore, he approached Dronacharya to learn Dhanurvidya from him. And Dronacharya, understanding his nature, said, "No, you are not qualified to become my student. I will not teach you." Because to give the power of knowledge of these weapons to someone who doesn't have good character is very dangerous. It's like giving a knife in the hand of a monkey. You don't do that. So therefore he said, "I will not teach you." So what did this do? Ekalavya do? He went and with mud, he made a murti of Dronacharya. And when Dronacharya was teaching Arjun and other students, he would hide behind trees, stand and watch what instructions Dronacharya is doing, how he is teaching. And he would come and in front of the murti of his guru, Dronacharya, who he considered his guru, he started practicing. And by practicing, he became so expert that he became a competitor for Arjun. And in fact, when Arjun and the Pandavas were going with Dronacharya, their royal pet dog, he hit him with arrows in his mouth to silence him, to Eklavya. And Dronacharya was surprised. Who is this fellow who shot so many arrows inside the mouth of the dog to silence him? So they come and they say that, "Oh, this is Eklavya." And Eklavya bows down to Dronacharya that you are my guru. You have taught me. By your blessings, I have learned all this. Now, this is very dangerous. For example, if I apply to Harvard University and Harvard University rejects my application, and I said, "No, somehow I will get the videos of the teachers of Harvard University. I will buy all the books of Harvard University. I will sit at home and I will hear those lectures. I will read those books and I will study. And then I see how the logo of Harvard University is. And at home, I design a certificate, a diploma, and I put MBA, Dr. Abhay Deshmukh from Harvard University, and I put it. And I say, "Oh, Harvard University, only by your mercy, only by listening to your lectures that I pirated somehow, only by listening to reading your books, I have become a Harvard graduate." What will Harvard University say? "You're a cheater. You're a fraud." That's what Eklavya was. He was claiming to be a student of Dronacharya when Dronacharya had rejected him, refused to teach him, but he's saying, "Dronacharya, I'm a student." That's why people sometimes they criticize Dronacharya. What is this? Dronacharya, he took the thumb of Eklavya. That is so bad. Eklavya is a hero. No, Eklavya was no hero. He was a very cruel person. His whole aim was to kill Arjun, to become better than Arjun. Therefore, Dronacharya said, "Okay, you consider me your guru, then give me Guru Dakshina." "Yes, Guru, whatever you want. Give me your right thumb." So then he cannot shoot the arrows properly. Then because arrows are to be held like this and shot. Now, without the right thumb, you have to do like this, which slows you down and it's not as fast. So he took the thumb away to teach him a lesson. And later on, Krishna killed Eklavya. In Mahabharata, that story is there. So therefore, Eklavya was like that. As far as we are concerned in Kali Yuga, everything is topsy-turvy in Kali Yuga, Kasturi Manjari Mataji. There is nothing, for example, I am a doctor. According to Vedas, the doctor's profession is to be performed only by a Brahmana. Brahmins, they had knowledge of Ayurveda. Ayurveda is one of the Vedas. Ayurveda, the science of medicine, it's part of the Vedas. And who studies the Vedas? Only Brahmins. So the Brahmanas are supposed to practice medicine and treat people, but never for money. So when a doctor is charging a copay and sending a bill to your insurance, that is not Brahman. Brahman never does anything for money. It is dakshina. Voluntarily, if someone wants to give some dakshina, the Brahman will accept. But so all the doctors, they are supposed to be Brahmanas, but none of us are Brahmanas. We are employed, we have a salary. So in this material world, everything is impure in Kali Yuga. Therefore, to your question, what is our nature? It is hard. It's not your fault, because in Kali Yuga, everything is somebody who is an actor. Acting is the work of a Shudra. Becoming an actor is a work of a Shudra. But who are the richest and the highest paid people in this world today? The actors, Hollywood and Bollywood. And there are magazines describing their pastimes, their transcendental activities. There are Filmfare and so many other magazines describing them. But actually they are Shudras. They are simply actors. In Mahabharata or Ramayana or in the Vedic culture, you will never see some actor who is doing like some drama and some acting being glorified. No, who is glorified? Dronacharya is glorified because he's a Brahman, he's a guru, he's a cool guru. Such people are glorified in the Vedic culture. But in today's culture, those who play, can you point anybody in Ramayana or Mahabharata or in the Vedas who was a sportsman being glorified? In today's society, the biggest leaders are sportsmen. What they say carries so much weight. They put something on Twitter and millions of people follow it. This sportsman has said like this. This is Vedvakya. This is the opinion of the Vedas. And everybody just worships them. This is Kali Yuga. Welcome to Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, it is not surprising that we find ourselves confused and we find ourselves a misfit. Why? Because nothing is pure. Everything is mixed. Everything is impure. Therefore, how do we find our nature and what we should do based on our swabhav, our nature? For that, we need a guru. And how to work, how to utilize our talents, how to utilize our earnings in the proper consciousness, for that, we need a guru. So the answer to your question, Mataji, is these are things that we have to discuss with our guru based on our swabhav, how we should engage in this world in a meaningful way. Okay? Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else has any questions or comments? If not, we'll stop here. Shri Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.